I watched a documentary that got Kyrie in trouble so that you don't have to. It's called Hebrews to Negroes, and I will do my best to have compassion because this whole thing is really sad. Anyway, Kyrie tweeted about this doc. The doc is anti-Semitic. People got in his case for it. He released an apology. He said, while doing research on Yahweh, I posted a documentary that contained some false anti-Semitic statements, narratives, and language that were untrue and offensive to the Jewish race and religion, and I take full accountability and responsibility for my actions. Pause this to read it if you want. But he had a really bad showing at an interview and he got suspended anyway. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it here. Look it up if you're curious. This is about the documentary. Now, people want to know what's in this documentary. What's the big mystery? It's nothing groundbreaking, certainly not the truth. The truth, they promise the truth. It's not the truth, whatever that means. It's not really a documentary, really. It's a religious sales pitch. It's trying to convert people to their religion, the Black Israelites. Just imagine the Jehovah's Witness come to your house and ask you to sit for a 3-hour documentary. That is basically this. Hebrews to Negroes does not hold any scholastic standards whatsoever. It doesn't hold up to any social standards. If you repeat these claims to any friends or family, you'll probably end up being embarrassed. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm actually saying that to help you. I don't want you to damage yourself in any way by repeating this flat earth level kind of stuff. Remember a few years ago, Kyrie said the earth was flat. So let's not take that out of the context of this conversation now. When he said the earth was flat, and we know the earth is not flat, so whatever. Plus, they want to charge you $12 to rent or $50 to buy, which I think is a scam. If it's the truth and it's essential for all Black people to know this, well, make it by donation. Make it free and have people donate. If it's the truth, of course they will donate. Now, the filmmaker released this statement. He said that he wants to make it free, maybe for Black History Month or something. I don't know. I paid $12 so that you don't have to. Now, this is an old trick. If someone scams you for $1, you're going to get mad about it. But if he scams you for $100 and a lot of your time, then you're not likely to say anything because you don't want to seem like a sucker. You don't want to show people that you're a fool who got scammed. Well, a lot of the people I feel that spent $12 in 3.5 hours don't want to seem like suckers because it's not a good documentary. Objectively, it's not good. Then there's this other new mind trick that's going on that people say, well, you haven't seen a documentary. Don't talk on it. Don't speak on it if you haven't seen this documentary. Don't speak on this documentary unless you've seen the whole thing, unless you have ignored your family for a day and spent your money to watch it. I don't even want to hear your opinion. There's no need. There's absolutely no need to do all of that stuff. There's nothing mysterious in this documentary. By keeping it hidden, they sort of form this air of mystery that doesn't deserve to even be there. And then we can't debate the actual topics in the documentary because no one has seen the documentary. Now it becomes a debate over who has actually seen the documentary. It is absurd. Meanwhile, it's 3.5 hours. People could be doing a lot with 3.5 hours, but instead they have to spend it watching this stupid documentary so they can be part of the conversation. Who knows? Kyrie may have just dropped the absolute truth. New tablets from up above. He didn't. This documentary is nonsense, and it's basically a scam. And I suppose my problem is that we shouldn't be wasting our time debating these trivial things when we still have major problems to worry about. And the people who spend 3.5 hours on this, they tend to do it because they're missing out on somewhere else in their lives where that time and effort, if it had been put towards those missing parts of their lives, might have actually been beneficial to them. But instead they waste the time on this stupid thing. And Kyrie should have known better. They asked him about it in the interview and he said, well, I just tweeted it out. Well, because you have tweeted it out, now all these people have to go and talk about it and waste their time. Look at this tweet. Look, we're bestsellers now. You're only bestsellers because there's this online mind game business with the did you see the documentary or not? Without this controversy surrounding the movie, this doc dies on 2012 YouTube with the other 4-hour schizo documentaries. 2012 YouTube. Those were the good old days, huh? Anyway, I don't like to call everything a cult. Some things are cults, some things are not. This is the United States. We get freedom of religion. The Black Israelites are not necessarily a cult. There are different types of Black Israelites, and some of them don't believe anti-Semitic stuff. I personally like to make the distinction between religion and cult, and I kind of draw the line like I draw the line between a drug habit and a drug addiction. If it affects your life, it's an addiction. It's a problem. If it doesn't, well, it's a free country, huh? There you go. That's what I think about religions and cults. Now, this doc does get a little culty towards the end. There are shades of cult in it. It is cult adjacent, a cult aftertaste. But we'll get to that. The major points of this documentary are that African Americans are the descendants of the ancient Israelites, that the ancient Israelites spread across the world, leaving evidence in India, in Australia, and in the New World, or as the kids like to call it, the Americas. This evidence is told through language and through genetics. This documentary claims that the pale-skinned people that we think of as Jews are in fact not Jews, they are Europeans. This documentary also claims, fourth major claim, that the major Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, have conspired to enslave the true Israelites, the Negroes. Now, that last one really pulls at the heartstrings because ultimately this filmmaker, I feel, is crying out for help because he realizes that the entire Eurasian world conspired against Africans and basically used us to feed this beast, to feed this lifestyle, this machine that is the economy, or various different economies, the Arab world, the New World, the European, and of course it's interconnected. So they used human bodies to feed this beast. And that since that time, Africans separated in different parts of the world are suffering, they're living subpar lifestyles compared to the people around them. It also appears that this filmmaker is incredibly superstitious. He asks why white Jesus hasn't answered the prayers of black people, but white Jesus has answered the prayers of the other races. Okay, white Jesus isn't answering anybody's prayers. Let me just throw that out there. He said that twice. Now, nothing I say in this video is out of spite for the filmmaker or the Black Israelites. This whole thing is actually really sad when you look at it. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that all humans have value, not because of our blood or our history or our ancestry, but because of our ideas and that the efforts that we can put into developing our talents. The whole concept of bloodlines and sacred bloodlines, it's like, it's kind of silly. We do have to remember that human beings are sacred, and it's really a tragedy that the world forgot that for many hundreds of years so that these thousands, these millions of African lives could feed the economy. It's a tragedy that Black people were forced to follow the master's religion, a religion that says, hey, don't worry about this life. You're going to get yours in the next life. I know a lot of you are Christians, but objectively looking at the fact that slaves were forced to follow Christianity, I mean, Christianity is a very passive religion. Let's just say that. It pacifies people. Yes, it's loving. Yes, it's compassionate, but it does have its downsides in that it encourages people just wait to heaven. You'll get your rewards in heaven. What about this life? Well, forget about this life. What about that heaven, huh? What about that heaven? Have you been to heaven? What's it like over there? Do we get our freedom? Oh, yeah, freedom and more. They have Doritos in heaven. Wait for it. Respect to my Christian audience. I'm kidding. I like to kid. Okay. Back to Hebrews to Negroes. First, the claim. No. First is that the first 10 to 15 minutes are actually previews for other documentaries. Documentaries that actually look more interesting than this one, because those documentaries are interviews. And this documentary is a giant PowerPoint presentation with a monotonous narrator. The monotonous narrator. Voice actors. If you're bored, I'm bored. Okay, move around a little, do something, get excited. Vary your pitch. Come on. I can't see your body language with my ears, but I can hear it. You know what I mean? Imagine you're having a conversation with somebody and they're just reading from a page. You don't like that conversation. You don't want to be involved in that conversation. It's boring. Okay, can we do scales? Can we do something? Can we get some variation in your voice for the entire 3 hours? No? Well, that's why I'm making this video, so that my fans don't have to watch this boring documentary. You don't have to go through what I went through. Okay, the first claim, that African Americans are the original Hebrews, the original Israelites that are in the Bible. Okay, In order to believe all of this, you need to believe in the literal historical accuracy of the Bible. If you do not believe that the Bible is the word of truth of God, then none of this is going to hold up for you. You also have to believe that God will resurrect his chosen people at the day of judgment so that being the chosen person actually matters. You need to believe in the curse of Ham and a lot of other primitive Christian things. I've always wondered why radio waves and electricity isn't mentioned in the Bible. Like, these things decide the modern world, and yet God didn't bring it up at all ever. There's no book of general relativity. Imagine you're in church and the preacher says, turn to 2nd Helix, verse 46. And you're like, oh, 2nd Helix, verse 46. That was a DNA joke. That was a DNA joke. Double points if you caught it. So already. Okay. This knowledge is the cutting edge for like 1650. It is not anything the modern mind has to deal with. If you're going to be competitive in the modern world. If you want to go live in a cave, this stuff is very interesting, I guess. Most of this movie is actually the worst parts of the Bible. By that, I mean the genealogy stuff. Anyone who's ever actually sat down and read the Bible knows what I mean. It's this person begat that person who begat this person who begat whatever. I don't care. They didn't begat anyone I know. And they begat everyone all the way over there. We're not over there. Hebrews to Negroes uses DNA tracking of migration patterns to fit its hypothesis. It makes the hypothesis and then makes things fit into it later. So that's why it's bad science. And this is what I mean. This is what I mean when I say a little bit of knowledge can be more dangerous than no knowledge whatsoever. Because this, from Hebrews to Negroes, is essentially a Mormon pitch that the lost tribe of Israel came to the Americas and came different places as well. I guess everywhere the lost tribe of Israel went, and they were all black. It's a lot of science-y talk, not really science talk, science-y. Because the common scientific consensus is that we all came out of Africa over a series of migrations. So we've got what we would call, what the filmmaker calls, Negroid people all over the world. The Aborigines in Australia, even in the Americas, way back in the day before the Native Americans came here, what we would consider Native Americans. So for anyone who hates black people, don't, because we all come from black people according to the science of the day, our day. And this to me is so beautiful already. Like, why introduce hate into it? Now, the filmmaker goes into language similarities across areas, across peoples. Now, you're going to have language similarities if you have a common migration. If you guys all came out together, there's going to be some commonalities. If people spoke to each other, there's going to be loan words. So loan words are when two groups meet, they will exchange certain words here and there. So just because there are similar words across regions, it doesn't mean that they have the same root language. And some of the things that he uses for language are really suspect. I'm looking at it and I had to stop and be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So the filmmaker talks about cuneiform Sanskrit as an example of how there may have been some overlap between some Indian languages or some subcontinent language and Sumerian, ancient Sumerian, which is written in cuneiform. Now, these Indian languages, it's not Hindi, it's Dravidian, which is like Tamil. Okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, cuneiform I get, Sanskrit I get. Cuneiform Sanskrit, I have never heard that phrasing before. Now, if you are a fan of Wording is Hard, you know that the Indo-European languages have a common ancestor. We talk about Proto-Indo-European all the time. It's called Pi. Cuneiform is completely different from just about any other language that there is. It stands on its own. It's a different language group entirely. And the script is not even similar to Tamil. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the only person who's used the phrase cuneiform Sanskrit. And apparently there was one scholar who said that maybe the Dravidian languages like Tamil may have had some roots in Sumerian. That was one scholar, one time. Okay? There are thousands of linguists who have said millions of things. Most of those things don't pan out. That's just the nature of science. People throw out an idea and they're like, oh, well, that doesn't really pan out, whatever. That's one of these things. But this filmmaker is jumping to the conclusion that because one person said it one time, then it's the absolute truth. It's not true. Cuneiform Sanskrit is mumbo jumbo. It's nonsense. It's nothing. He said nothing with that. But a lot of people are not familiar with cuneiform or Sanskrit, so they would say, oh, cuneiform Sanskrit, it must be a thing because I heard it in this documentary. It's not a thing. It's not. You see how annoying that thing I was saying about cuneiform Sanskrit and Dravidian is? That's this entire documentary. It's just hyper-specific things that he just throws out there like Dennis Miller used to do and hopes that the audience knows what he's talking about. Whatever. It's fine. Not mad about it. People at home like, oh my, you're mad about it. I'm not mad about it. I'm just trying to explain things because not only did I waste 3 hours time, actually probably 5 when you figure out all the times I had to stop and go look it up because I'm like, what is he talking about right now? Oh, I know that didn't make any sense. Cherry picking language examples, especially saying, oh, look, all these languages have a similar word for the word Jesus. Like, yeah, because Jesus came from Hebrew. Of course they're going to. They're going to have a similar word for any of the stuff that comes from the religious stuff if, in fact, they are talking about the Hebrew religion. Like, it's like right now, across the world, people use American terms when they're talking about electronics and they're talking about science. They use Latin terms. It's not because they all independently came up with this thing and, oh, we all share a common ancestor with English and Latin. That's not the case. It's because it was that culture that put that out into the collective consciousness. So that's why we have Hebrew terms for religious things and why we have American terms for electronic things. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. Nothing bothers me. It's raining. Can you hear the rain? Isn't that nice? Moving on to the anti-Semitism claim. People say that it is not anti-Semitic to claim that blacks are the real Israelites. It isn't. It's not. But it is anti-Semitic to deny the Holocaust. It is anti-Semitic to quote Henry Ford, who was a noted anti-Semite. How big of an anti-Semite was Henry Ford? Well, he wrote the book on it. Also note for historical themes, Henry Ford gave us the assembly line. He helped the Nazis. The Nazis used assembly line thinking to commit the Holocaust. It's anti-Semitic to parrot white nationalist Nazi talking points and to point to this debunked interview, this Rosenthal interview that he hangs on as if it's the word of God. It's a debunked Nazi hoax. Plus, they misquoted Hitler. They use a Hitler quote, which is just dumb because if you're going to perform for Nazis, at least stick the landing, get it right, use a correct Hitler quote. But Hitler was a degenerate fool. Hitler sucked. Look at the history of the battles of World War II. They could not mount a defense at Normandy because Hitler couldn't be bothered before 11 a.m. He needed his beauty sleep. Hitler was an idiot. Very often in this world, the biggest tragedies happen because of goofy fools. Also, let's not forget that we fought a war against the Nazis. Little history reminder here. I see people on Twitter and it bothers me. They are acting like they don't have an uncle buried in France. They don't have an uncle buried in the South Pacific. That their grandfather's cousin wasn't lynched by these same white nationalists who are saying these awfully anti-Semitic things, who are putting out this interview and saying, see, it's the fact. It's just, people are speaking against their real history that they should be proud of for this fantasy history. This cozying up to Nazis and white nationalists. I'm flabbergasted. I am flabbergasted like when we see a Confederate flag in the North. Whenever I see a Confederate flag in the North, I'm like, what is the matter with you? You know your family shed blood for this, right? And now you coming out here look like a fool? Whatever. It's fine. It doesn't matter. We don't get upset about these things, do we? We're over it now, aren't we? Yeah, we fought a whole war against the Nazis. A whole ass war, regardless. Okay, someone tweeted this. This is from Shahem, aka Dr. Durag at Shawtired on Twitter. Black people thinking we are all Hebrews and Israelites is so sad, to be honest. I set foot in some of the slave castles in West Africa and wept. Denying our actual history for this fictitious anti-Semitism is kinda gross. Being African American is a beautiful thing. Having African ancestry is a beautiful thing. Please be serious. Thank you, Shaw Tired. I see why you are tired. Hebrews to Negroes claims that the black people are descendants of Noah and they were replaced in the Levant by Greek Jews, so European Jews, after the conquest of Alexander the Great. So this is BC, like 300 or so BC, 400 BC. Okay. This filmmaker is missing about 1,300 years of history. He basically yada yada yadas from the 2nd AD until the African slave trade in the 1500s. He yada 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 1,300 years of history. The filmmaker repeatedly repeats the claim that we all know that the biblical characters were white. The consensus is that the biblical characters were white. That is not the consensus. Nobody actually thinks that except for white nationalists and the most poorly educated. We learned very early on, we've known for centuries that the Hebrews of that era, the biblical Hebrews, were not white. And yes, a lot of modern Hebrews did come from Europe in the 20th century, but that's because things got really dicey in Europe in the 20th century. I don't want to go into it, but there was drama. There were already plenty of dark-skinned Jews already living there. And there were shades of dark. There are shades of dark. It's not just white and black. There are the shades. Arabs. What about the Arabs? The filmmaker distinguishes between white Arabs and black Arabs. But what about Arabs? Brown-skinned people? There are more races on this earth than white and black. And I think the filmmaker maybe doesn't understand this. Overall, this documentary was just badly done. Hebrews to Negroes is divided into chapters, but the chapters are not titled. There's no particular order to them. He talks about genetics, about language, about Aborigines, about the Mayans. Why not give each topic a chapter rather than just throwing them in there and then randomly dividing it up by chapters? If this person is looking to make further anti-Semitic documentaries in the future, he could organize them better. That's all I'm saying. Make it easier for the viewer to understand your anti-Semitism. Plus, at the end, the filmmaker hints that he is personally chosen for something, that he is special, and he's supposed to bring this message to the masses. It's religion, so okay, but that's what I mean when you get into that cult adjacent kind of thing where we're supposed to hero worship the maker of this documentary. Good documentaries are actually supposed to be impartial, and this is not impartial. Now, the biggest lesson I get from this is that there are a lot of African Americans who are hurting badly, who have low self-esteem because of their race. Maybe they feel they're not able to keep up with the modern world. Slavery is over, civil rights happened, but that generational wealth, the generational wealth has helped a lot of white people, let's just say it. And Asians come here and they seem to be able to pick up and to get it and to just hit the ground running. And you've also got the disintegration of the black family. It's really hurting people. Not having a father at home, not being financially stable, it's hurting people. And let's not forget 2008. 2008 was targeted, much of it, at black families. We're not going to go into it now, but the market collapse of 2008 had a lot to do with mortgages, particularly adjustable rate mortgages, these predatory loans. Salesmen targeted underprivileged families and convinced them to sign their homes away. I will never be out here mad at some 3rd century BC ancient history when the people who committed 2008 are just walking around. You're mad at ancient history? 2008 was just now. What? But that's another video. So I understand there's a reason to feel all this frustration. It's infuriating. Especially add that to the rapidly changing modern world. Like, it would be hard for any race, but plus you add technology. So there's a lot more adapting we have to do. We have to do it fast. And a lot of people are just not able to do it. And plus, our schools are failing. Obviously, our schools are failing. And the media, which is supposed to be helping us catch up, is actually sabotaging society. All of society, not just Black society. People may be more comfortable than they have ever been at any other time, but the amount of uncertainty that we're facing is also more than at any other time. Combine that with a cruel history and a chaotic future, I get why people are searching for some absolute truth, especially if that truth is personally empowering to them. It's just not there. Here's the truth. Every moment that a person spends on bloodlines and not on schoolwork or job training is a moment that is wasted. They sabotage themselves by filling up their brains with this useless ideology that really doesn't apply to the real world. It only compounds the problem. Yes, our ancestors were enslaved. Yes, my ancestors were enslaved. We shouldn't then go and enslave ourselves in the present time by placing ourselves in these little boxes and giving away all of our power. Let me break down all of genetics. I'm going to break down all of genetics for you real quick, okay? I'm going to break it down in the only way that is relevant to your life. You've got 2 parents. You've got 4 grandparents. You've got 8 great-grandparents. You've got 16 great-great-grandparents. If you go back to 1800, you've got 254 ancestors, and that's not including aunts and uncles. That's just people who have contributed to your genes. 254 people that put in to make you, give or take a few dozen. If 1 or 2 of them came through ancient Israel, that's cool, but it doesn't mean you're any better or worse than anybody else. It doesn't make a difference. 254. 3 of them came through Israel. So no one is better or worse than anyone else because of who their ancestors were or who they weren't. Go back to 1700 and that 254 people grows exponentially. And if we take it back to biblical times, all the way back to biblical times, okay, everybody's cousin if we take it back to biblical times. Your family history does not matter unless you've got a rich uncle that's going to leave you something. Or if you have to talk to your doctor about diabetes, then your family history matters. Otherwise, the rest of it is just trivia. It doesn't matter. Girls, we have sequenced the genome. There is no magic in there. We know what's in there. It's all just organic widgets and stuff. Don't even think about it unless you're going to become a geneticist. Just move on and do the work you have to do on your day-to-day. Just the whole premise of this documentary is deeply, deeply confused. Jewish people. These pale-skinned Jewish people, they are Jewish people because they maintain Jewish customs. They read that book and they wear that sash that they wear. They eat that dinner that they eat with the little bone and the horseradish. I don't know why they do that. They do it. It's fine. They spin the thing, the dreidel, they spin it. They spin it every year and have for thousands of years. I don't know why they do it. They've done it for thousands of years for some reason. And you know what? That's what makes them Jewish. Good for you. I have a litmus test for what makes a Jew. Okay, you want to hear it? When the Nazis were putting people onto trains, were they on the list? You're on the list, you're a Jew. That's my same litmus test for what a woman is. Okay? The town knew what a woman was when they were setting women on fire. Okay? During the witch hunts, there was no question as to what was a woman then. When it was time to burn them at the stake, to put them at the stake and set them on fire and burn them, to hang them, there was no question of what a woman was, huh? When they were putting these Jews into trains to send them to the concentration camps, no one was like, actually, I am a Jew too. No, okay? Let's just say it. Also, everybody knew what a black person was when it was time to use the right water fountain during segregation. Everybody knew what a black person was. Now we get to think around it because we're so comfortable. Remember Sammy Davis? Sammy Davis is a very famous black Jew. So I have a test for what makes a Jew that is a lot more recent and a lot more relevant than this movie, which is basically mumbo jumbo. The test that happened during the Holocaust, which this movie denies. This movie denies the Holocaust. Here is a screenshot. Here is the tweet that's been going around. Jews have established 5 major falsehoods which work to conceal their nature and protect their status and power. To wit, Jews are Israelites and thus God's chosen people. 2, that Jesus was a Jew. 3, that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust during World War II. Oh, problematic. Okay, so it goes on. That all races are equal or that all are brothers. I agree with that totally. What's wrong with thinking that all races are equal and all races are brothers? We have to now. And 5, that Jews are just another religious group. And then he tops it off with the Nazi hoax, this Ashkenazi Jew Harold Wallace Rosenthal interview. Here's why you should not deny the Holocaust, for very practical reasons. The Nazis kept very careful records of the Holocaust. That's why it's fascinating. The Nazis killed Jews like regular people stock the shelves at Kroger. You know what's on the shelf. That is how accurately they killed Jews. We can see the records. They wrote all this stuff down. And you have to be a complete sociopath to keep careful records of wholesale murder. Let me just say that. And also, what kind of a twisted people would study all those careful records? Historians. It's interesting. It's just interesting. It's fascinating. We're not going into it. But they kept careful records so we know that the Holocaust happened. Now, I'm going to add this. The Torah has been around for thousands of years. But we haven't always had a great quality of life. If the truth is in the Torah, well, we should have, huh? No. The upgrade to our quality of life came with the Enlightenment. It didn't come from any of these Abrahamic religions. Remember that. It was the Enlightenment. It was math. It was reason. It was putting satellites into space so you can watch porn and order wings on your phone. That's when it happened. None of this superstitious Abrahamic of the book stuff. You know what book matters? Principia Mathematica. Principia Mathematica is basically calculus, and it has helped us. It has assisted us engineer all the great things that we have today. And the man who wrote it was also a religious nut, so there's that. Moving on. Now, if any group wants a seat at the modern table, they have to learn about science, about computers, about law. There are a lot of jobs in CGI, in entertainment, jobs that pay a lot of money, CGI, animation, technical skills that people are hiring for. Leave all of this religious stuff behind. Always look forward, never look backwards. I know you all want to thank me. You're like, Maya, thank you so much. You've saved me $12 and 3 hours of my life. Okay. Thank me by paying it forward. Just take your little cousin or your niece or your goddaughter or if you have a male child in your life, sure. Take them out for ice cream, take them out for hot chocolate, and then just talk to them about their future. It's the same amount of time, it's the same amount of money, but it would actually help your life and your lineage. A geneticist. This movie deals with genetics. Talk to her about that. A linguist. Talk to her about how she becomes a linguist, especially if your family doesn't have a lot of money. It's okay. You can take out loans. You can go to state school. There's ways around it. You don't even have to take out a lot of loans. You can keep those loans limited. Explain to her the practical steps that she or he, if it's a boy, that she can take to have these careers. Bloodlines. Who are you, the Prince of Wales? You care about bloodlines? Oh my God. I can't. I can't. It's too goofy. Subscribe.